course, I'm Egyptian. I come from Egypt, and it's been less than 9 months. Louder? Okay.
There, you're going to have to speak closer.
Closer, like this. Yeah. Like a rock star. Okay. Now, of course, this subject is very interesting to me, at least. It's very dear to my heart as an Egyptian, coming from a country of 7,000 years, but a revolution of 8 months. Let me start first of all by, since we're talking about the lessons learned from the horrific events of 9/11, I'd like to start off by mentioning what I really believe is the main lesson of the Egyptian revolution, which is that there is immense power in peaceful change in our region. The series of revolts that started in the Arab world, known as the Arab Spring, is in fact a testament to this kind of peaceful potential within the nations of our region. And whilst many trace back violence in the world to the Middle East, that same region, I believe, has demonstrated that the strong will of its people to conduct peaceful change, change from within, is definitely possible. Also, how this will shape the region and affect how the world views this region as well is yet to be seen, because interestingly enough, I believe that time is like distance. The longer both are, the better we get to see the overall picture. So I believe that we will only understand what's going on in the Arab world now only with time. Just like today, 10 years after 9/11, with reflection, I believe that all of us see 9/11 clearly today, much better than when it actually happened. So I hope that the current transformation that we're seeing now in the Arab world is going to continue to have its positive effects to not only the region, but also to the world, and how they study how this region is evolving, and to also help in changing the way the world sees this region. In the case of Egypt is for me fascinating. I think it's something that brought a really huge silent dream to life for a country that had this in it. A lot of people, I wouldn't say were paranoid, going around not wanting to talk about the government or whatever in the previous pre-revolution Egypt, but many of them had a very clear vision of what they wanted for the future, but nobody really knew how to move to that stage. It was very difficult for many to comprehend that you can just, sit it out in the streets, have a protest, and in 3 weeks' time, you'll have a president go. I think it was fascinating by all measures. But before I talk about the current developments in Egypt and how this revolution happened, let me just give some points about pre-revolution Egypt, which is, I think, will give a good background to how this all happened. Even though Egypt had some general tolerance for limited opposition, the government did leave some boundaries for the political parties and the opposition. It remained very modest. And many people believed that there was little hope that the general order of things will change. The status quo will remain the same. Also, from an economic standpoint, even though the private sector was flourishing, businesses became the real locomotive for Egypt. It seemed from a macroeconomic standpoint that it's doing very well, yet this just left the poor behind, and it just was a concern for many. But again, many dismissed it as the general order of things, that this is how it's going to be, and it's the status quo, not just in Egypt, but in the entire region. Also, another problem that was being faced in Egypt was the growing merger between the businessmen and politicians. Something that you have in many areas of the world, but also in Egypt this was definitely a case. So all of this was the perfect recipe for something definitely to happen. But how did it actually happen? The 25th of January of this year was the day when the revolution started. According to some activists that I've actually seen and in their personal testimony, many of them, when they organized, especially through social media networks, they did not really think that they will be able to do this on that day the way they did. They just felt that they wanted to go, and in fact they chose that day. January 25th was, it's the Egyptian police day. So their idea, according to them, was, we just want to give the police a hard time and let's just go and, take to the streets. They didn't know that it will have this domino effect. But in fact, if you ask me personally, I feel that it actually started 3 months before. In November of 2010, so that's at least 2 or 3 months before the revolution, we had parliamentary elections in Egypt. That was full of, by the accounts of many, full of a lot of irregularities, in a way that just made people feel that, this is just the low point, and so the boiling point was just getting much higher. So that triggered a certain type of despair in society, that we felt that something was definitely going to happen. That was in November. Then December passes with the Tunisian revolution, and then on the 11th of January, the Tunisian president flees the country. Now you have to see this in its bigger regional context. When you see a Tunisian president just flee the country after 3 weeks of Tunisian protests, a lot of the ones who took to the streets on the 25th of January, only less than 11 days after his departure, felt that maybe we can do something like this, and so they took to the streets on the 25th. Of course, as a reaction to what the youth were doing on the 25th, the security forces tried to contain them. Their heavy-handed reactions only compounded the problem, and so the whole issue was exacerbated. And then you had, I don't want to know, I don't want to get into too much detail about the revolution, but I think the rest is history, as we all know. From the 25th of January, how things escalated, till the 11th of February, where the president of Egypt just stepped down, leaving the army in control of Egypt.